Hello, I'm MJ from Lioness Publications, and yesterday I decided to take a look at Epstein's chart. His chart was very interesting. If I have a chance, we might look at that later tonight. But that brought up a question. I said, you know what? Let me do a question spread. And I did. And I thought it was very interesting. So that's what I want to go over in this session. Now, my question was just simply, does a client list exist? And it came about because all of a sudden now there is no client list is coming from the administration. And I'll leave it to you to decide why that might be occurring. We're just going to be here reading the chart. So first, now this was set for last night. And my question was literally, does a client list exist? And this is regarding Epstein. So when we look at a question chart, the first thing we look at is the position of the moon and whether that falls in place with the question you're asking. Now, there could be better places for the moon rather than in the 11th house. But in this case, we're looking at a client list. So as I actually looked at this more or less, and I was saying, yeah, that's probably where I would probably think it would go. It might have ended up in the 8th house of sexual type activity, sex trafficking type things. But, as the more I thought about it, I'm not asking about that portion of it. I'm asking whether a client list exists. And in effect, the client list would be his buddies, Epstein buddies. So 11th house would be a place where it's a community, literally, and sort of like a charity, well, not charity, but, a church, but it's certain people that are together because of certain interests they hold. So after deciding, yes, that was okay, I went to look in the chart in more detail. And the moon is at 12 degrees, and normally if it makes angles before it moves out to the next sign, we can look at that as being a valid path, because that's what the moon does. It gives you the events up to the conclusion. So we are making some angles here. If it wasn't making any angles, then in effect, it's almost like, well, it's not worth it. The question just really doesn't have any bearing, doesn't have any merit to it. Now, the next thing I looked at is the first house, because that stands for Epstein. What do we have here? Pluto. Pluto manipulation. So that really falls in line also with the question that I'm asking. And in effect, it's describing him, in effect, as being someone that can be cold, calculating, and manipulative. So with that, I said, okay, let's read the chart and see what it says. Now, when I read a chart, I look at the angles, for example, of the ascendant to what it is making, but I more closely follow the moon, and I see what events are being noted and what the conclusion is from the moon. So first thing we have is that the ruler of the first house is Saturn. Saturn is sitting right next to Neptune. It's conjunct. And this is interesting in that we're asking about client list, and this would be of people that are having their fantasies fulfilled. So we have Saturn in conjunction with Neptune. Saturn, people that are repressed. Neptune, in effect, they're repressing their fantasies. And Epstein was giving them a way to live their fantasies out. So when I saw that, I said, yeah, that's going along with that. So next, I started following the track of the moon because I wanted to see the events. Now, the moon starts at 12, and it's going to make a few angles. It will make an angle to the sun, which is over here. And then it'll move to make an angle to the north node. And then, as the final angle, it will make it to the wounded warrior. So 3 angles here. Let's take a look at what they say. Well, actually, 4 angles. We've got one also to fate right over here. So the first one we're going to look at is to Sun. Now, this is an inconjunct, which is a break and adjust. Now, what's notable here is that we've got the Sun, which is the ruler of the 8th house. So we are bringing the 8th house in. Now, what is this assuming? Well, it's bringing, in effect, sex trafficking into this equation. And since it's a break and adjust, it is in effect people that are associated with that actually causing some type of friction here. We then have the moon making an angle to fate. Now, fate is some occurrence that an event that happened that was not able to be stopped. Now, what could that be? And again, I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying, it's something different. I'm saying fate, something that happened to him that couldn't be stopped, was in effect his death. Now, notable, just to come back to the Sun, ruler of the 8th, we're dealing possibly with people that, in effect, have possible motive of revenge, because that would also fall into the 8th house. Now, as we move to the next angle, that is the North Node. North Node is where we take in. In this case, what is the benefit to him, to Epstein? Well, this is where the money comes in, because the North Node is where we take in. It's located in the 2nd house, so it's all about money. Lastly, and by the way, that is a square, that moon to the node. So that is not an easy angle. There is some karma associated with anything that we have with the North and the South nodes. Next thing we have, and the last, is moon is making an angle to the wounded warrior. In this case, the wounded warrior, and it's a trine angle, which is a good angle. In this case, this is identifying the answer to the question. A trine would be a yes. So, does a client list exist? Yes. And this further elaborates that by saying the client list consists of men who have deep wounds within them. And that, in effect, is men, and it could be women, but chances are it's men, since it was women mostly that I know that were being trafficked. These are men that needed something to fill out their lives. They weren't able to get something in a normal way, so they went around and got around the obstacles. Being a trine, the answer is yes, there is a client list that exists. Hope you enjoyed that reading, and have a good evening. Thank you.